All right, so my name is Rio Waller, and I'm your instructor for the rest of CIT 93. And I'm glad to be here. I'm surprised to be here, as you are probably surprised to have me here. But we will manage this change. This is just change that happens in life. Sometimes it's obviously not optimal, but I believe we can make the best of it. And I am optimistic, honestly. I'm excited. One of the things, and I've kind of got my list of just, I want to cover some brief topics, and then we're going to go into a second video where we actually do some coding. So in this, I've been teaching JavaScript for several years now at Fresno City, and I happen to love JavaScript. One of the things I know Todd bashes JavaScript on, and he's not wrong, is that there's just some weirdness about it. How can something that has these little weirdness things be so popular? And the truth is, and he said this in one of his videos, is that it has evolved over time. So, in my teaching style of JavaScript, one of the things, because I'm not a developer professionally, I have in my past courses leaned on to developers who are professionals who create these wonderful courses on Udemy that are great. And I have found they've really been helpful for leveling up my students and myself, quite frankly. And because I'm teaching this at a point that we've already started, I feel like having you use a course is probably not a great thing, honestly, because I can give you the material. I feel ready to do that. And that's exciting for me, actually. It's something I was already considering doing because I was scheduled to teach React JS in the fall semester, but because of some scheduling changes, that may or may not happen. And I have taught, I mean, a lot of courses here at City besides HTML, CSS. Some of you, many of you actually, several of you are in my CIT 82 class, Intro to Web Development. And I also teach in the cybersecurity program as well. So through all those, anyway, that's kind of, in doing this, let me get back to my original concept, is that I'm not going to lean on Udemy courses. One of the things that I find with learning to code, and this is one of the things you're going to hear me say here in a bit, is like, it's copying and pasting code is not learning to code. It's a step towards it, but it's not learning to code. And in this class from here on out, one of the things you're going to hear me say, because I'm going to set it up so that you code along with me, and then I'll have you take the concepts and you will then write some code based on those concepts to help you integrate that knowledge. Because I really found, and this has been true for me, is when I learn is when I'm behind the keyboard actually coding, not copying and pasting. Now, there are times maybe it's appropriate, but most of the time, especially for a beginner course like this, it's not. Okay, so this is the change in my style for this semester. I'm not going to use Udemy courses. This is something a couple of you have already asked me because you've taken some of my other classes. I am going to offer Discord up here. I would say to you, if you want, I'd love for a group of you, because I have really found, especially with coding, is like, and here's the other thing, is your schedule and mine are going to be different. I am a early morning gal. I get up in the morning. I generally go work out. I have a breakfast. I sit down and start grading or prepping content or something like that. I finish around 6 in the early evening, and then I'm pretty much offline because I have a life as well. So Discord is great because then you can connect with other folks when I'm not around, and it helps create community, which is part of what we want in any class, but especially a coding class like this. Okay, you want to have people that can help you. Now, I don't know if there will be, the part of that will depend on how many of you join. So I've provided a link here. Do know, and that's one of the things I've set up here. I've provided the link to Python. And you might go, Rio, we're talking about JavaScript. Well, Python has a great code of conduct. And the thing is, when I run my Discord servers, I do want to make sure students have an understanding of what's okay and what's not. So read through that if you have any questions. If you do join, you'll be dropped into the general channel. And then here in the start here, just ask me to add you into the course channel, which is only for the students in this course. Okay. So if you want to do that, check it out. Like I said, I love JavaScript. I really do. And I've already talked about TypeScript a little bit. The local dev environment, I really like the defer and the modules that he showed. One of the things I want to show with the module as I was working through, because I did work through the code as well, here in the index file when he talked about the modules, okay, and I'll just put this here, put me here, is he did a script for both of these. And if you look at them, if module one, right? In module two, you are importing from module one. So as I was looking at this, the one clarification I would make is because you're importing, right, from module one here, you actually don't need to include this module one in the index.html. Okay. So here's my thing. My one of the things I do is like go in there, run the live server, right, and then take out the module one and see if it still works. And the answer is it will. Okay, so and that's good to know is because you're importing that other file. Now modules seem like to me something I wouldn't introduce yet, but since he's introduced it, we'll talk about it. Modules is really something that is definitely something you could use today when you want to break up your files or your functions into modular and do that. And as we go forward, I'm totally open to that idea. But here in the beginning seems like a bit much to throw. Okay. Now, autosave on VS Code. I saw Todd talk about this, but then I didn't see him using it, and I must have missed where he talked about it. But he was talking about using the keyboard shortcuts for this. And I'll just increase my font size, which, by the way, you can do. In this case, let me just close this out real quick. When you're modifying code, right? He was showing how you get that circle. Well, here's why autosave is so awesome because you don't actually have to um, you don't have to manually save it. VS Code will do that for you. So my recommendation is definitely to use that. Okay. And this I've already said, like, don't copy code. Don't do it. It won't help you, and it won't help your grade here. And in this case, yeah, you could redo it, but you'll have to go back and do that code and put in what I will have going forward, which is basically comments are the way that I know you're writing code, or sorry, commits. Not and comments are good too, by the way. Always good to have in your code. One of the things about comments, just while we're there, is that also the way you write code can be self-documenting because the way you create variables, the way you create function names, the way you write the code can help describe what the code is doing, often as well as comments. Not that you shouldn't use them. Okay. And then yeah, that's the importance of that in this case is that the commits are how I know. So here's what we're going to go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and do one. So one of the things Todd's having you do here in this structure, right, is you're creating these folders. It's not my favorite, I'll be honest with you, but yeah, you've already started. I can flex as well. I don't have to change that part of it. We can totally use it. It's not the way I would do it, but that's okay. I have down here a README file, right? So up here in the JS, right, we're going to create this in, and I'm going to roll this up so you can see this, is when now if I create the file as selecting this folder, that's where it will create it. Now I've already created the file here. So actually, let me just go ahead and delete it so that we can do it together. Okay. There we go. So now down in here, I can either right click here or I can come up here and I can say readme.md. Now MD is Markdown. Okay, Markdown, that extension is if you've taken my CIT82, I teach Markdown as one of the first things, not a big deal, pretty easy. I can give you a cheat sheet and I'm going to say week. And this is what you need to do, by the way, as I'm doing this. You might as well follow along. Week 6, video 1, my thoughts, right? So this is where, right, you could here just, give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts about this, right? Uh, anything you'd want to ask me or anything coming out of these comments, you might want to know what else is going to change. And the truth is, I'm not planning to do major changes. But I will tell you the stuff I've already covered, which is making sure you're doing commits, writing code, not copying code. Those are important to me. So you'll see that as I integrate into this. And now, and doing project-based work is honestly probably what one of the most important things I find about doing uh, code is actually creating things, because that's when it gets exciting. That's when it gets fun. But in order for us to do that, we have to complete covering the basics, and that's what we need to do. And I'll do that starting in the second video here. Okay. So here, so I've added this file, right? So now I already had this file, so you will see a different color here. But one of the things, and this is the other thing that I noticed, Todd doesn't like the integrated terminal, right? So the integrated terminal, and he uses bash because he's used to it. And I totally understand that. I would say to anyone here is that, and I'm on a Mac right now. I use both Mac, Windows, Linux a little bit, Chromebook some. Um, for coding, I've used all those, but my primary daily driver is a Mac and Windows. I kind of switch back and forth depending on what I'm doing. But regardless of that, because on the Windows side, right, the thing that you will see here, let's just do it here, is that you will see PowerShell, and PowerShell is Microsoft's command line that has been a major upgrade from the command line that what we've had in the past, right? But even in that Power script, you can run the Git workflow, right? But if you want, and I tend to do this, like notice how for me, and let me again increase the font size so you can see this. Here is that I can say, hey, use bash instead. Now, bash will, the next time I bring up the terminal, go away. So if I wanted to, I could come over here and say select default, and then I could select which one I want as my default. If I wanted bash from here on out, when I close the terminal and I go back to new terminal, right, then it's going to show up bash, which is awesome. So I'm in this, and by the way, this folder, all these folders within this JS class folder, and all of them set off the root folder, and the README is in the root folder. So one thing I recommend students just get used to is, changing directory or right click and say open an integrated terminal. And what that does, oh no, notice that it actually went back. I'll have to play with that a little more. It went back to ZSH. No big deal. I can still use everything, or I can just hit bash here, and then and actually ls works here as well. It was already opened in the root, which is great. So git add, and I noticed Todd did dash add, I think, or dash add. One of the things I do is just, matter of fact, let me clear the screen so you can see this. So I do git add star. Just adds everything that I have been modifying, and git commit -m. Okay, and now this is where, and you can see this here, after you do your writing here, in here in this file, right, then what you will do is say, right, and this is where I specify commit messages, right? I'm very specific about those. So make sure you get them. Video one, my thoughts, meaning your thoughts about the content that I've covered so far, right? So now I've committed it, and now I push it, okay? Now, the other thing, and I will kind of end with this, is that I saw when I worked through Todd's content for week 1 through 4, he showed you how to do SSH, create that SSH, which is awesome. But typically something I don't think we see in beginning classes, but it's good to know. One of the things I do is I typically just have students clone. So if you have any problems with that local environment setup, come talk to me. Or if you want, just ask me. I'd be happy to post. And I mean, I could just post it anyway if you wanted to see the way I show students how to clone. It was basically, set it up on GitHub, clone it locally, and then in that cloning process, right, you will create authentication. You'll connect your local to GitHub. And so this is what you guys did. I think all of you, and depending on how you did it, maybe you already had experience. Maybe you had taken one of my other classes. You're like, I know how to git clone. Maybe you just did the SSH. Trust me, it's a good thing to know how to do these things multiple ways, always good. So, if you're having problems with that because you need to be pushing code, doing the Git workflow locally and then pushing that code, because as we write more and more code, I mean, just trying to upload files through GitHub, a web interface, not great. And by the way, just FYI, once you have started committing code, if you go out and try to change something on GitHub, it'll create what we call conflicts, easily resolved. But just know that the where you change code is locally from here on out. Again, come talk to me. So at this point, I've done the git push, which means it's out. Matter of fact, let's just go look. Yeah. So if I go to GitHub and I go to mine, one of the things, if you've taken my courses before, I use a GitHub organization, but not for this class. Just because Todd hadn't done it, and I feel like doing it at this point would be too much. But I want to show you, okay, here, like here's the commits, right? Here's what we call commit history. And so look at what this is that this is the URL when I say commit, give me your commit history that I'll be looking for, right? So if you go to that JS class, whatever you've called it, right? You go in, let me just back up so you can see it, right? You go into to the class, and inside the class, normally you've been giving these URLs, but from here on out, you go to commits. Okay, and under commits, you just give me that URL. As a matter of fact, what's kind of nice about that is you can just keep that somewhere, and every time you're submitting, when I have you submit this type of work, sometimes it may be a little different, but in this case, probably for the first couple weeks, that'll be the commits that I'll want you to submit. Right. So now you're going to end up submitting this for the next part of this. So now I'll show you this again at the end. You don't have to. You're only going to commit for these two videos once. Okay. All right. Wonderful to meet you. I look forward to wrong one. I look forward to getting to know hopefully most of you through this process. Again, I would say my door's open. My schedule is on the simple syllabus. As far as Zoom, if I'm in my office, I'm also on Zoom. Only day I'm not in my office is Friday when I do virtual. Okay. All right. Nice to meet you. And let's keep going.